ProCannabisMedia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
This is our weekly look at the variety of news stories regarding the cannabis industry in the U.S. and around the world. And this week, we've got the Republican National Convention to talk about here, California wildfires wiping out acres of cannabis grows, and a sad Polish elephant is about to get an injection of CBD for her depression.
Well, you know, there's also bigger news where our POTUS is asking his challenger to take a drug test. Now, Jimmy, let me ask you, is Sleepy Joe sleepy for a reason we should be testing for? What's your take on this?
I think it's much ado about nothing, which is pretty much what comes out of you-know-whose mouth pretty much every time. He used this same tactic in 2016 when Hillary ran. And it just shows that I think President Trump is a little worried that Joe Biden actually had some passion during the Democratic National Convention with his speech. And I like the fact that he's calling for some kind of a test because he thinks Joe is now awakened to the challenge.
That could be. Another big news is we have the alcohol industry is now worried about cannabis-infused drinks. If you're a follower of Cannabis.net, you know that we're not big believers in this based on the fact, well, if you mix alcohol with cannabis, what effect are you trying to get? Are you trying to get buzzed on alcohol? Are you trying to get high? One is actually a depressant and one elevates you. But that's our opinion. Jimmy, you have another opinion. What's your opinion on cannabis-infused beverages coming into the future?
If they can figure out a way to mix it and maintain the buzz that you do get with that 8-time catalyst of alcohol in addition to cannabis, then maybe it does work. But again, you're right, Kurt. One's an upper, one's a downer. It's all about maintenance and trying to use cannabis in a responsible way. So I personally am willing to try a cannabis-infused drink if I was offered it. Is that all right?
I think it's fine. Everyone should try it. I just wonder if it's going to be mixed with alcohol. I think the alcohol combo is a head fake. I think investors are going to lose money on that. But yes, there are cannabis beverages out in legal states, Colorado, California. You can get them, walk into a dispensary here in Massachusetts and get them. But again, they make up such a small sales percentage, even in Colorado and California. I don't see where the big explosion is nationally if we ever got legalization, where people would walk into a store and choose a beverage over, say, the other 10 products.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Cannabis Beverage Association, is now estimated to make $4 billion by 2024. So as you can expect, there is some money in this. So let's go to our reporter in Canada, Solomon Israel, for the Canada Cannabis Report. Solomon?
I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily International, and this is the Weed Talk News Canadian Cannabis Report. Marijuana producer Hexo and brewer Molson Coors have launched new cannabis beverages under their Truss Beverage brand. That marks new competition in Canada's young cannabis beverage market, which has attracted significant media interest. Recent data shows the market share of beverages and edibles remains small in key Canadian markets. On Canada's Atlantic coast, the province of Nova Scotia plans to double its cannabis store count in the face of sluggish sales. Sales declined on a quarterly basis in the quarter ended June 28th as COVID-19 hurt store attendance. The province already has opened the first of 14 new stores, which will mostly be located inside government-run liquor stores. And the province of New Brunswick is kicking the can on a decision to privatize its marijuana retailers. The province has 20 government-owned cannabis stores and has issued an RFP for a private sector operator to take them over. But with a provincial election coming in September, the final decision will be left to New Brunswick's next government. You can read those stories and more at mjbizdaily.com. I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily.
2-1. Here's this week's Marijuana 2020 factoid from MJ Biz Daily's annual Book of Facts. Did you know the U.S. has 3 times the medical dispensaries than adult use recreational dispensaries? No, I didn't think so. Okay, Even with that advantage, rec sales are expected to be 30% higher than med sales in the United States in 2020. Legal adult use sales are expected to be $10 billion and med sales between 5.8 and 8.1 billion. Just one of the many facts in Marijuana Business Daily's fact book, and you can get that at mjbizdaily.com. The state of Nebraska got enough signatures to add legalization to a medical cannabis program initiative on that November ballot. However, it wasn't easy. Not only did COVID force organizers to go door to door during the pandemic shutdown, but now they will face a legal challenge in court in Nebraska about the question's clarity. Now, if this sounds familiar, the same challenge was thrown out by a judge in Arizona a few weeks ago. Kurt, is this deja vu all over again?
Yes, Jimmy, you're right. It will get thrown out. And as we say, history rhymes. It doesn't repeat. When a state like Oklahoma opens up 2,000 dispensaries and grow licenses and starts getting everyone from the surrounding states, kind of like when Colorado did it 6 or 8 years ago, everybody else wants to get some of that tax revenue. So you can certainly expect Nebraska, whether they're for or against cannabis, they are for tax revenue. And when half their population is going across the Red River to get some marijuana, they're going to allow it, at least on the medical side, and they're going to start getting some tax revenue, yes.
All right, so Nebraska joined 6 other states voting on either legalization for adult use or introduction of medicinal cannabis programs. And even in Mississippi, they will be voting on that. Speaking of voting, let's go down to Phil Adams from the Vote Pro podcast for our DC report. Phil?
Hi, Phil Adams from Vote Pro podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC report. It's the Republicans' turn for their convention this week, and the GOP is already making their policy clear. They are not planning to address cannabis reform in 2020. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel said this week that cannabis legalization should be addressed at the state level. In an interview with Gray TV News, McDaniel said, quote, "That's not something that the RNC puts forward as policy. That's going to be left up to the states and our legislators." A recent Gallup survey showed that a significant majority of Republican voters now support legalization. President Trump has said that he supports states' rights to set their own cannabis policies. On the other side of the aisle, California Congresswoman Barbara Lee gave the Democratic ticket mixed reviews on their cannabis policy. While praising Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris for her support of legalization, Lee, who is the co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, also lamented the fact that Joe Biden's policy falls short. Biden and his party platform favor decriminalization. The Congresswoman expressed confidence in her party's platform, however, saying, quote, "Just as President Obama evolved around marriage equality, Joe Biden's going to have to evolve around legalization." California Senator Cory Gardner is asking the Department of Agriculture to hold off implementation of its rules governing the U.S. hemp industry. In a letter to Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue, Gardner and several of his colleagues called on the USDA to delay the final rule pending consultation with state regulators, quote, "to encourage greater flexibility for farmers and encourage innovation of the industry." Earlier this month, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sent a similar letter to Perdue asking to delay implementation until 2022. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Out in California, those wildfires are wreaking havoc on some of the legal cannabis farms in Sonoma County. Just south of San Francisco is Santa Cruz County, and there is a medicinal farm there called Wham Phytotherapies that had been evacuated. Now, other farms like Sweet Creek and Preferred Gardens west of Sacramento have sustained devastating damage as hundreds of thousands of cannabis crops have been burned down. So once again, Mother Nature not being gentle on those California farms. Kurt?
It's too bad we can't take some of the water from the hurricane in Louisiana and transfer it quickly over to California, and everybody's a winner then. So fortunately, it doesn't work that way. Some of the growers had problems with the wildfires last year. And it's just a tricky situation because it's hard to get insurance for certain types of crops, even in California, including cannabis. So hopefully they can get those under control.
That's what they want, is an under control situation. And out of Pennsylvania now, there's some positive news for cannabis advocates. Their governor, Tom Wolf, is asking his legislature to legalize cannabis in order to boost economic relief during the pandemic. He's floating the idea of state-run stores. And even in Vermont, their attempt to launch a retail market in the state has hit a bit of a snag. Kurt, it's the only state that legalized possession of 1 ounce of cannabis or under, but hasn't introduced an adult use retail program. Politics and weed banging heads again.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of the plan that the governor of Pennsylvania had. I don't like the idea of state-run stores. I don't think that's ever been a success in many retail areas. But you are seeing more, mergers and acquisition. People are expanding their footprints, just like we talked about last week with Curaleaf. And guess what? There's more mergers and acquisitions to report. Let's go to Deb Borchardt with the latest in the cannabis industry for mergers and acquisitions.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. This week, Columbia Care said it was going to buy the Green Solution in an all-stock deal that's expected to close on September 1st. The Colorado-based TGS is said to have unaudited revenue through July 2020 of $57.6 million. Columbia Care said the deal would be immediately accretive. Tilt Holdings reported that its revenue fell 9% sequentially to $38.6 million. The company blamed the decline on COVID-related headwinds that included decreased sales at its vape subsidiary, Jupiter Research, and also lower wholesale demand in the cannabis sector due to the temporary suspension of adult use sales in Massachusetts. And finally, MindMed said that it is working with the University Hospital Basel Lecti Lab on a combination MDMA and LSD phase 1 clinical trial. Now, the phase 1 trial is expected to start in the 4th quarter of this year, and it will take place in Basel, Switzerland. They're studying whether MDMA will reduce the potential for a bad trip when someone's having an LSD treatment. That's it for this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt with the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
There may not be a medicinal marijuana program in the country of Poland, but veterinarians there have a sad elephant who lost the leader of its herd, Erna. It seems Fredzia, the elephant, is suffering from distress and depression because of that loss. So vets will be giving her an elephant-sized dose of CBD with the hopes that will improve Fredzia's mood. Kurt, you just can't make this stuff up now, can you?
I just want to see the video of the size of the bale of hemp that elephant is going to consume, probably the size of a small Volkswagen. And then as everyone just watches and keeps their notebooks open to see what happens. So it's great if we know the research on CBD in animals, especially with anxiety and some distress, has been great. So let's see what it does to a pachyderm the size of a small trailer. Let's see what happens.
Or the size of a vending machine, right?
We do have vending machines now. Let's talk about the COVID adjustments, not only curbside, but new vending machines for cannabis appearing in Colorado at Strawberry Fields Dispensary, right, Jimmy?
That is it, Kurt, and that will do it for Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton with Cannabis.net.
It's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another very special edition of Weed Talk Now. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
And we are so excited to welcome Terry Buell to our program to talk about journalism, because this woman has been named one of the toughest journalists in the business when it comes to cannabis reporting. Terry, are you happy with Smash Mouth journalism?
Yeah, I think it's great. Josh Brown, if you guys know Josh Brown from CNBC, he came up with that tagline for me, and then I think we trademarked it. So that's us.
Well, congratulations on that. And your reputation, it certainly precedes you. I am very impressed with your resume and what you did back in 2008 specifically. And here we are in 2020, and it looks like you might have a certain very impressive, very old brand in cannabis in your crosshairs, and that would be High Times. What is the latest right now on what's going on with High Times since last week, when the SEC said you guys better stop your wheelings and dealings for an IPO?
Right. Okay. Well, let's start back with the fact that High Times still has never filed in the last year their required annual report. Right. This would be their cash flow, their balance sheet. It would be have an auditor audit their assets so that Main Street unsophisticated investors could know what they're investing in real time. And so the SEC actually told them all the way back, it was on June 12th, because they missed the deadline, that they cannot accept investments anymore. You have to halt raising money. And Adam Levine didn't do that. I mean, he didn't file an SEC filing telling anyone that they needed to do that. And I found that alarming. And when we got a tip, we went and asked their lawyers, and they said, yes, it's true, we can't accept investments. And I go, well, why haven't you informed anyone of that? And you know what they said? They said, the SEC doesn't make us do it, so we don't think we need to do it. And my editor, Sean Hawking, and me, who's amazing at Cannabis Law Report, was like, Terry, you have to report this right now. I mean, this is just a complete lack of transparency, and it's completely unfair for the Main Street investor trying to get into cannabis. In working on that, reporting on that story, it took us a few days. And Adam's lawyers, Stephen Weiss, they did answer questions, but it was a consistent spin that they were doing a soft pause on the IPO. And, I called the SEC press office, and they clearly explained, no, we're telling you that you have to stop. This isn't your choice. This isn't some huge design plan that Adam Levine has come up with. And so I was, again, once floored, as I've seen Adam actually try to talk to Jeff Smith at MJ Biz and get him to tell a completely different side of the story. And that's just not okay for the chairman of a company who's trying to become public.
Terry, let me take a step back. What was the first moment where you raised an eyebrow, or you first came onto this High Times scent? What was the initial, that's interesting. Like, what did it for you?
We actually broke a story 3 weeks ago, and it was another tip. And we learned that the company had made a false statement in their SEC filings when they said that Stormy Simon was still their chairman. So the backstory is she should call and complain. And they had to file another, what's called a 1U form. And then they finally admitted, oh, by the way, when she's left, she didn't stay on as chairman. So that was our first start. We're just like, what is happening here? And once again, High Times lawyers said, well, the SEC doesn't have a problem with this. So the next tip came and said, Terry, call the SEC. I don't think that High Times is legally allowed to sell investments in its Reg A offering. Its Reg A offering is what we call a mini IPO that they're trying to raise up to $50 million. And that's what we did.
And your follow-up to that was on Harvest Health. Can you tell us a little bit about that deal and what you discovered?
Okay, so after that news broke, as always happens in investigative journalism, we got a lot more tips. And we were suggested to try to look at the original merger agreement between a company called Have a Heart. These are dispensaries mainly through the state of Washington. There's 2 in California, and there were 2 in Iowa. Have a Heart's parent company would be called Interurban Capital Group. And so it was in March that Harvest Health announced an $80 million buyout of that entire company. And then in literally 2 months later, we see a letter of intent filed by High Times now and Harvest saying, okay, well, we're actually going to buy the California assets of Have a Heart. And why that was contradictory is that Harvest had just been on an investor call telling people, when an analyst asked, why are you doing this deal? They said, well, we want a stronger footprint in California. So it didn't make sense that 2 months later, they're getting rid of everything they just bought in California. So it took some work, but I got someone to leak me their private merger document. And from there, I mean, we definitely have a lot of anonymous sources in this story, but we were able to talk to some of the original social equity owners who would technically have done all the work to go to their local cities in Oakland or San Francisco, or I think there's one in San Bernardino, and secured, and these are not unlimited, right? Secured the social equity license so they could open a dispensary. And we found out that ever since this deal especially with Harvest and Interurban Group went down, nobody has paid rent. They just stopped paying rent on these dispensaries. Harvest just didn't the entire time that they're trying to sell these assets to Adam Levine, they just stopped paying rent. Now, why that's critical is that a lot of the California cities, these licenses, there's 2 stores that open, so those are finally approved, but the other 8 are not, right? And those licenses are contingent on 1, you keep paying the rent, right? You help the local business owner. And number 2, you have to show you're spending money on a build out. That means physically making the store, right? And it's got all kinds of regulations and standards that they have to do. If you stop doing that, we've seen other cities say, okay, you're not going to have this license. We're going to go and put this out, for a bid, and someone else is going to get it.
Can I ask a little bit about High Times? Yeah, let me just ask about High Times and how desperate is this company right now? They started in publishing, then they went over to the events. Events got completely, ended when COVID came around. And now they're going after what a lot of people in this business want to do, which is control that seed to sale, the vertical. They're trying to find verticals that they can buy into. But where is he getting the cash to do this? Is this all just monopoly money?
Some of it, a lot of it is. But he has raised, at least his SEC, Adam says he's raised 20 million. His SEC filing says he's raised 15, okay? So he does have some cash, such as the deal with Harvest. He only had to put down 1.5 million and then give him $60 million in stock for what I believe is just worthless assets right now because they didn't take care of the assets. So here's the story I always heard, and this is me speculating some. Adam, who is a VC, he's been with other companies that have gone public before, even though those definitely did not work out. Like I think it was Bebo or Beto. He saw a cheap, or he thought it was cheap. He ended up paying way too much for it. He saw a cannabis company he could buy an IPO. That's all he thought about in 2017. And it didn't matter to him if he overpaid for it. He just thought all I have to do is get stock, get my discounted stock, and get myself to NASDAQ. Well, guess what? NASDAQ wouldn't let him list. And he couldn't get enough. You need a certain amount of shareholders to be listed on NASDAQ. He couldn't pull that off. So he had to go to plan B, which is try to list through a mini IPO, gathering money. I think it's the minimum investment is $550 from Main Street. From your average guy who's going to go and buy your cannabis flower in a store and is excited about all these new opportunities in the business and wants to be a part of this movement, right? Except he can't do it. He's been doing this for 2 years. I wrote about reggae offerings, so before they started, a company called a Growth Capitalist Investor. So we wrote about the legislation. We watched every new IPO happen. We watched every money get raised in things like electric cars. And it's hard to raise 50 million. No one has raised 50 million yet, I think. So I think his goal was unrealistic also. Like actually 15 or 20 million raised from a group of Main Street investors, that's actually considered a good reggae offering. So he's been buying and buying, right? With his like shares. Okay, these are like preferred shares. Keep in mind, he calls these the good shares, while your average investor in the Reg A offering gets the bad shares. So he gives the good shares to, mom and pop startup companies that want their exit strategy. They want to get out. But we have no idea if those shares are ever going to trade.
Do you think they will? That was my next question. Do you think there'll ever be a tradable share? Because giving them away like their monopoly money, was that ever really in his plan?
Yes, I think he does plan to list. So it's not too hard to get listed on the OTC markets, unfortunately. You have to have a certain, I think it's the OTCQB. There's even one level below that, which he could try to list on. It doesn't get as much coverage. Investors don't trust it as much, but he can list. He has enough shareholders to list right now. This to me is more of a game that he wants to get as many, unsophisticated investors in as he can right now before he actually has to file a 2019 annual audited report. Because I think when we see that, Kurt, as you've talked about before, the amount of debt that is going to be on there, the complete lack of cash flow is going to be alarming. And I think someone would rather go outside and burn their dollar bills with their joint than invest in High Times.
Well, let me ask you, I've talked to High Times about their original offering was as a events company, and now it's transitioned to a plant touching company. And I brought up the conversation with them when I had it. Is there some sort of refund or give back policy? Because investors who did the first 6 or 8 months were pitched A, and now it's a completely looking different company. And maybe someone in Texas says, oh, I don't want to be touching the plant right now. And they were going to have to look
with all
into
Reg A offerings, I looked at that language. Unfortunately, no. They have the leeway, as most of them do, to do whatever they want with your money. And I did speak with actually 2 investors last week after they read my story. They wanted to get out, and they showed me the emails they sent and the response from High Times Investor Relations. And it said, no, your investment's gone through. We're not giving you your money back. But hey, guess what? We'll have our financials filed by September 30th, and we'll definitely list by the 4th quarter. Now, this is probably the 3rd or 4th time these investors have heard this, though.
I would think that they're losing their patience.
buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do right now.
Terry, let me ask you a question about the industry itself. There are a lot of multi-state operators out there that are using social equity applicants as, I don't want to use the word tools, but as figureheads. And isn't this another thing that High Times is trying to accomplish here?
So that would be more go back to Interurban Group and have a heart who got the license in the first place. Now, the social equity owners I interviewed, no, they want to run a business. They did put them on as CEOs, but they are very involved and ready to step in and do their job. They were just happy that someone else came along with the rest of the money to help do the build out and move forward. Now they're hoping for a real business, and I think they just lost it. And the risk is that this license is going to go back to the city, like with Oakland or with what's happening with Alexis. He was the gentleman who had the Union Square store, if you've seen his name in a lot of articles, because he is the one person who's gone on the record and spoken out. That was an incredible location. I learned it took them 2 years to get zoning for that. They had to fight Chanel because they didn't want a cannabis store on Gary Street. And I think, that license is going to go back to the city, and he gets to reapply.
Can I talk a little bit about valuations of? Can we talk a little bit about valuations of companies? Valuations, to me, is a lot of made up. How are they valuing each one of these companies that they're going after or trying to make deals with? It always seems to be almost like, let's pick this number, let's pick that number. How do they come up with the value for the company when they get involved with that?
So I tried to get Harvest and High Times to admit that. I was able to actually get what's called a capitalization table. I have a copy of what a man named Dan Raniere. He's really the majority owner. He was the one who negotiated the deal for Have a Heart with Harvest. And it really just looked like they made up a value. Okay, so let's take a look. Inner Urban Group, right? They did have $4 million in cash, and they were profitable. They had a net profit. It was either 3 or 4 million. Okay, that was it. Then they had 5 locations. 5 locations in Washington, 2 in California, 2 in Iowa. So 9 working locations, right? I mean, maybe what you throw $1 million on for each of those, maybe 5 million. We're still not getting anywhere near $80 million. To me, this was like, let's just throw an enormous amount of stock at this, and then we can somehow verify that we're going to get to this number. And I think that's wrong.
Kurt, you've been talking about that on pretty much every show. Whenever we bring up High Times, it's just like stock here, stock there, right?
Cash flow. If it was $80 million and their cash flow was $4 million, that's like 20 times what you like.
Right. I don't know too many industries you can do that with, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe Zoom.
Is it?
We're on right now. Maybe Zoom technology during COVID got that. That's about right.
That's right.
Let me ask
There's
you.
something else important, though, I want to say. In the research, at first I thought maybe Adam just didn't want to spend the money, because we have no idea how much money he really has right now, and didn't do the due diligence to understand that a lot of these California licenses he was buying from Harvest, are not operational. If you don't pay the rent, you could lose the license. And for like the stores, and this is like in the SEC filings, and it's in the private merger agreement I got. The one Oakland store that is working, by the way, there's another individual named Josh Chase who owns 51% of that. And the merger documents say he doesn't have to sell. He didn't sell. I mean, he's in control of that store. So I don't know what Adam might get a smaller piece of the equity, okay? But I don't think he's going to get a management contract, which is really the other business model that they have set up here. So, and I think he knew that before June 23rd, when they closed that deal, based on my interviews. I think he knew full well he wasn't getting very much, not $60 million worth as he put on his press release.
What does this look like? What's your prediction 6 months from now, 9 months? What is High Times? Is it trading on a much lower exchange? Do they get there? What's your prediction in a crystal ball? 12 months.
I think if they try to really list at the end of the quarter, they're going to try to come out at $1. It's going to go down to, let's say, 25 cents. Everyone's going to try to flood and get out of that stock. Then they're going to have a bunch of worthless stock and a ton of debt for all these companies that they're going to try to be, they're trying to buy or said they have a letter of intent. And then they're going to get sued. And maybe the SEC will start to investigate because of the complete lack of disclosure on this deal.
This is why investing in a law firm is probably the safest investment in the cannabis industry these days. At least I've been saying that, because there's always going to be lawsuits. And it seems that the cannabis industry is starting to kind of pile up more and more of these cases of mismanagement, fiscal irresponsibility, and they never do any due diligence. They don't do any background checks, and they're just kind of making up figures. And at some point, doesn't the...
But they just pretend like everything's fine, and it's not, and that's even more worrisome.
Does this all change?
Hold on, High Times Harvest and Have a Heart have already been sued. They were recently sued by the Iowa landlord in New York State, and it's quite possible that Thor Equities, who has the mega $200,000 a month lease that's been broken in Union Square, is going to sue too.
Speaking of legal, has High Times or any of their lawyers reached out to yourself, your editor, and put pressure on you to retract or take down?
Even before the reporting started, when I was simply asking questions about, I don't understand why you're not disclosing more about the fact that you've had to halt your IPO. And it reminded me, and then couldn't get a straight answer if they were actually still collecting, investments, like finalizing investments. And so they are allowed to still market, which is kind of alarming. but they can still, send out marketing materials and tell people about the offer. What they can't do is collect the investment. So, I said this reminded me of a company called MedX. It was one of the first cannabis companies. They sold pesticide and they had some website or some newsletter that went public at least like 2 years ago. And the SEC did halt them because they didn't file their financials on time and they were still collecting investments. So High Times was furious that I was going to even compare them to that situation. They had a lawyer out of California send me a cease and desist before we'd even published. I talked it over with my editor and he said, that's ridiculous. We stand by our reporting, and we went forward with that. We found out since so many publications followed our story and used the same language as High Times has to halt the IPO. Adam personally was on the phone with other editors and other owners of other businesses threatening them. And unfortunately, some of them did change their headlines and remove their stories, but he also had his lawyers trying to, once again, send out letters, trying to stop free and accurate speech.
Do you feel
that sounds familiar?
Other smaller cannabis
I don't ever take down a story, ever.
Right.
I've been here before,
Right.
There's 2 different cannabis players who have tried to sue me in the past. They're always dropped. They just want to try to get through discovery, and they always drop the case with prejudice eventually. If I report something, we stand by it.
Nice. You brought up so many things. I'm overwhelmed with things I can talk to you about. But at some point, if we see federal legalization in 2021, 22, 23, whenever it happens, and there's going to be more people trying to get into the now legal cannabis industry and take other companies public, the first ones in aren't exactly setting a great example, are they?
No, but here's the thing. And if you talk to, there's a lawyer in the cannabis space. He was at a big law firm. Now he's at Hiller. His name is David Feldman. He's an amazing securities attorney. He wrote the first book on Reg A offerings. And he educated me on this. We need federal approval. That way, NASDAQ and the NYSE will accept these offerings. And when they do that, then they have, at least 50% more restrictions and accountability, because they would be fully reporting SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission companies. Unlike almost every company we see goes to list on the Canadian Stock Exchange, which is the most loosey-goosey exchange I've ever seen in my life. They just want to collect listing fees. And at that exchange, you actually don't even, when you do a merger deal, they got a law passed 2 years ago where you don't even have to disclose all of the individuals or the hedge funds or the family funds that are in on the merger deal that would get stock. They said that's a privacy violation in Canada. I'm just like, what? So everyone right now is on the CSE. The CSE is even easier than the Toronto Stock Exchange. So I think that we would have a lot better mature companies with better lawyers bringing them public, better auditors auditing their financial statements, and they have to do audited quarterly reports.
Let's
who do we blame? Go ahead, Kurt.
We've come out on
Go
the
ahead,
hard.
Kurt.
If you were put in charge of High Times and had to turn this thing around and make it a positive results, what could he do? What immediately could he pivot? What would you do if you were Adam and wanted to turn this thing into a positive result for people?
Ethically, I would give back all the Main Street investors' money. Then I would go out and I would try to cancel all of he has way too many deals that he's got out there. I would take the 1 or 2 dispensary companies that actually have a valid license and have most of their physical buildings built out, and I would try to make those 2 businesses run, and I would keep the company private, and I would try to raise money through institutions or family offices. Wow. And then I would go and do a regular IPO. Once I'd proven I have a real business and not about a letter of intents and maybe ideas.
I think when I had done that interview with Stormy when she was CEO, I always thought one of their advantages compared to, say, I know Tommy and Cheech Marin are going to get into the dispensary. We had MedMen. something they can pitch is like, we have those High Times Cup winners, right? So if you wanted to try the best shatter, or you wanted that special blue dream, and they could put a certain amount at every one of their dispensaries, that's a real hook for
That would be amazing.
shadows, right? I want to try the winner. And I thought she was going that direction. And that's actually something that would make a difference in, say, dispensary A, B, and C. Like, oh, cool, shatter from this year's winner, I can go buy it at a High Times dispensary as opposed to somewhere else.
Which would be amazing, but that's going to need capital, Kurt, right? And yeah, they would have to raise that to execute that business plan.
One of the things you brought up was, what is Adam's net worth? How can you find out what a private person has for net worth in order to find out, is that where he's getting his money, or how much money does this guy really have? Can you get at his taxes?
Well, I don't believe I could ever get a straight answer out of Adam. So if I asked him directly, I don't think he would tell me the truth, unfortunately.
No, I don't think
I have
he would.
no, but he has a proven track record of using stock, using marketing and promotional campaigns to allow that stock to grow or create a perception in the market, and then selling the business at an advantage to him while the new buyers are left with not very much.
Wow.
Now, that's not illegal, okay, right? I mean, that is capitalism at its finest, right? But I have no idea. I know the last interview he did in December, which is ironic. He's got some vacation home with, it's a half brother or a step brother. So they're off living in Puerto Rico right now.
Well,
you know,
that's nice.
Puerto Rico has what, 0 income tax or something, right? I mean, it's just the tax advantage you could get if you still want to pretend to be a United States citizen.
If you were in Vegas right now and making odds for a year out, is it more probable Adam is facing serious scrutiny and jail time, or he walks away from this scot-free?
I think he walks away scot-free, except for the civil lawsuits that are going to happen.
Is the cannabis industry as it is right now? Are we going to see improvements in their business practices if this goes legal, or are we going to still see more shady deals like we've been seeing over the first few years?
I think that with any startup business, it's just going through growing pains. So that's going to take the market holding them accountable. And you do that by not buying their stock and not investing in their company if they don't give you transparent financials and information, and don't answer investors' questions and allow you to check their backgrounds, right? Doesn't the city, I think all these cities check their backgrounds before they give a license, right? Even though that's a private transaction. Why can't investors see that information?
It's the host security agreements in so many states that takes up all that capital up front. It's why people that have been most affected on the war on drugs can't get into this business, because they can't afford the upfront rent costs just to secure a location before they can even go and get their license. Isn't it the government?
No, they need Wall Street money right now. That's true.
Right.
Or angel investors. Yeah.
Right. And I think Kurt, we were talking to Bruce about this, Bruce Barcott from Leafly last night. Will there be a fund available through private investors that the social equity applicants can get their hands on in some capacity, just to get them started? And by the way, if I had the money, I'd give it to them, but I don't have that money. I don't know who does.
That's a good question. I haven't seen a fund like that. They could be out there, but since it's private, one hasn't come off my radar. I wouldn't be surprised if they start, though. I mean, the market's going to happen. It's going to grow. What are the estimates? In like mega billions, right? Double digit? Right. Is it triple digit billions sometimes? That is all going to happen. Right. So I think there just has to be a shakeout of good quality funds and high net worth individuals trying to help cannabis entrepreneurs get started, and we can have a cleaner market.
There you go.
Terry, how can people contact you? What's the best way if they see this video, like you said, on whether it's live or whether it's later, and they want to get quotes or learn more about what you're doing? What's the best way to reach you? Social media?
They should always go to Cannabis Law Report. My name and my face are right there in the center if they want to read my reporting. Then they can find me on Buhl, B-U-H-L Reports. That's my Twitter handle. And as I also have my own publication, terrybuell.com, which covers stock fraud or Wall Street fraud in any industry. And I always take anonymous tips at terrybuell@gmail. That's TerryBuhl@gmail.
We'll be putting that up on the screen. And I did that due diligence on you, and that's what earned you the respect that I have for you once I found out what you've been up to as a journalist. It's going to take people like you to really make a difference and get this industry kind of buttoned up the way it needs to be because of the opportunities, not just for greed in America and capitalism, but really to make the kind of change that this industry has an obligation to make. Do you think that the cannabis industry has this?
Reporting, Jimmy, and you're right, which, I saw the stories coming out, and this is why I was so glad to meet this Australian, Sean Hawking, who owns Cannabis Law Report. He had worked at other large publications before and was just tired of the fluff stories to kowtow to advertisers or anyone who was afraid to do investigative reporting, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of companies, you do have to have liability insurance or make sure that, I don't know, you could handle a lawsuit, right? So
Right.
A lot of journalists aren't set up that way, and then that's a shame. But there are larger publications like Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Forbes. I mean, they could be assigning, and Barron's actually has, since Bill Albert's been covering cannabis deals, and he's done a great job at Barron's. We need more larger companies who have that backing, right, to be able to handle losing an advertiser or getting sued to go up against these companies right now. That's why I thought it was such a great place to switch into and start covering in the last year, because there's so much fraud. There's so much to report. I love it.
There you go. Hey, you're doing a great job, and I'm glad I am no longer a journalist. I am very happy being a talk show host. I want to make sure people understand that there is a difference when you talk about this subject as opposed to going out and doing all the work that you're doing, Terry. So I do commend you for your work ethic on that, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. I really appreciate you taking the time out and enlightening not just me and Kurt, but our audience as well. And we will certainly find you online at the Cannabis Law Report and continue to really enjoy your work, because that is probably one of the best compliments you can give a journalist is, I really enjoy your work. And we do, Terry. So keep it up. Keep it up. For Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly and keep it in the bank, people. Keep your money in the bank for now. Don't be throwing it around at some of these speculative opportunities. I don't know. That's just how I feel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube.
Hey, Jimmy Young here, and welcome to Pro Cannabis Media's live stream and soon to be Cannabis Chat from Pro Cannabis Media. I am the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, so I get to interrupt and talk whenever I want. We are a multimedia strategic marketing agency that produces original content that we are sharing here on Twitch TV now. Now, I've hosted the podcast In the Weeds with Jimmy Young since March of 2018, and we've produced hundreds of episodes and have totaled thousands of downloads of that podcast and views of that program on our distribution network of like-minded internet sites. Now, one of those sites is Cannabis.net. It was founded by another Massachusetts native named Kurt Dalton. He and I co-host a Weed Talk News show, a news and commentary show that we produce weekly on Thursday nights for release on Fridays. Other contributors to that show are Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report, Phil Adams from the Vote Pro podcast out of Washington, D.C., and MJ Biz International Solomon Israel, who reports on the Canadian cannabis scene. Now, coming up on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back in this studio to host Cannabis Chat Live, an interactive program featuring more of the best of content of our interviews with some of the biggest names in the cannabis industry, like Bruce Linton, the ex-CEO of Canopy Growth, Nick Kovacevic, the CEO from Kushco, Jamie Pearson from Bang Nation. You know, they're the #1 edible company in Canada. Steve D'Angelo, the father of the cannabis advocacy movement and the founder of the Last Prisoner Project. Joe Lusardi, the CEO of Curaleaf, the largest multi-state operator in the U.S., and many, many more. So tune in to Chat Live on Wednesday, September 9th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, or watch it on demand when you want to. Now, I'll have some interesting guests on the phone or in studio for that Cannabis Chat show, but it's really going to be about you, the viewer, who is interested in this whole new world of weed out there. We'll answer your questions and share excerpts from the various people that I've interviewed over the years and who I have been learning about this new industry from. For those of you who might be interested in sports, and I know a lot of gamers on Twitch are into sports, I used to be a full-time sportscaster in the New England area on TV, where I actually won an Emmy Award for a sports talk show for kids I co-founded back in the 90s, probably a decade when quite a few of you were born. So subscribe, like, share, and follow Pro Cannabis Media. We want to give a voice to the cannabis industry and now give you a chance to chat on Cannabis Chat Live, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch TV /ProCannabisMedia.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Live from the Visual Radio TV studios in Quincy, Massachusetts, it's We Talk Live with Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net and Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia.com.
Yeah, I want to actually give you guys.
Here we thought we were going to bring food to us. Like right out loud. Now we get T-shirts.
So you said
A few articles on Cannabis.net about margin compression. And I think when this 2 to 3 years out, we're going to see the price of this flower come down, down, down.
All right, the show must go on. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Weed Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I am Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Hey, Anything going on in the world, Kurt?
It's pretty quiet out there. We got the bomb shelter and they got the blockades up. What's going on in the world today?
I don't know, but that coronavirus has killed us in a way that I didn't expect. And at least we are still here to talk about it. Unfortunately, our two main guests have been delayed and have been overwhelmed. And that would be the two founders of the New England Cannabis Convention, Jeff Lawrence and Mark Shepard. They both were not able to join us at the very last minute. In fact, I think Mark is on his way to Chicago to try and save that show that they have scheduled on April 3rd and 4th in Chicago. At this time, that show is still going on. However, the one in Boston is done. In fact, join the club. Kurt, I have never seen so much panic in the streets, panic in sports. I mean, everywhere there's panic except in this studio. We're very much under control. The coronavirus obviously is on everybody's mind. Yes, we will be talking about it. Yes, we have some doctors to talk to about that, including Dr. Ryan Zachlin. We'll be talking to him in just a few minutes. And then at the top of the hour, we bring on Dr. Jordan Tischler as well. But that's not all, right, Kurt?
That's right. Not only is it a great night to do this show, we're asking everyone up front right now, if you're watching, to share this on your social networks because we have two doctors coming on to talk about the effects cannabis can have on a virus. If you don't know, THC has a lot of antiviral properties. Now, it does not stop the coronavirus. It is not a vaccine. But in a sense, if you're going to do a lot of orange juice before a cold and multivitamins, does it behoove you now to take THC, say edibles every day, or some version of cannabis with viruses going around? And we're going to talk to doctors about this. So we want people, we're holding off the first doctor so that you can share it and kind of tell people, hey, there's doctors coming on talking about cannabis and viruses. You need to watch this. So please share it now. We also might have the Pure Oasis guys calling in with the first dispensary, recreational in Boston.
And that was actually a pretty big deal. Think about it. Another historic event in Boston that the first social equity economic empowerment group, Kobe Evans, and is it Kevin Hart? Is that the other one?
Yes.
Have now opened up Pure Oasis on Blue Hill Avenue right across from the Franklin Park Zoo. And you know what? There's no sign outside, but we will have some B-roll of their opening that we will be able to share with you so you'll know exactly where it is. I believe it is 430 Blue Hill Avenue in Dorchester.
Yes.
They couldn't get the 420 address, I guess.
I know. That'd probably
missed it
knock
by
a
10.
house over.
That's right. So please share this onto your Facebook pages, all your social media. And we do have, I do have Facebook up on the Pro Cannabis Media page. So if you want to shoot me a comment or a question, I will try to get that forward. I will tell you that there is a little bit of a delay between what is coming out of my mouth now and what I will see coming out of my mouth, as gross as that might be, in just about 4 minutes. That's called live streaming. That's just how this whole thing works.
And we also have a call-in feature this week. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yes, we do. And I actually think I might remember the number. No, I won't. Nope. It's 617-544.
We'll get it for you. You can call it. But here's the thing. If we have a phone guest, we can't take your call. So if a doctor is on the line, and we have two doctors coming talking to us by phone tonight about corona and cannabis, you can put it right underneath the Facebook feed. Type in, we have people working here tonight that will look at your comment and your question for the doctor. And then if we don't have a call-in guest, you're welcome to, if something we say or talk about, you want to chime in and give your opinion, you can use the call-in line, and we'll put you on the air and take your questions or do comments.
And the number is 617-544-7307. So for those of you who are sports nuts, I believe that's John Hanna and Phil Esposito.
You have to be very New England fans, for sure.
I know they're New England fans, right? I understand. But that's pretty much it. And, of course, you have double Bobby Orr in there, too, with number 4.
Give it to him again.
The number is 617-544-7307. And, of course, I am also on the Facebook page. And we can certainly add in some of your comments and to say hello to the guys here and everything. And have we introduced our third member of our team tonight?
We actually have another guy.
So standing in for Mark Shepard and Jeff Lawrence is a good friend, a somewhat regular on this show. It's David Rabinovitz. There he is.
Welcome, David.
Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Good to see you, and thank you for coming out of the woodwork, really, and coming in here and subbing. Appreciate it.
Great to be here, Jimmy.
Tell me what's going on, first of all, in your world before we get to the Dr. Zachlin on the phone. What's going on with, and it's New-Can, isn't it?
It's New-Can, that's right.
So tell us about New-Can. What's happening?
We're in the process of nailing down a location. We're about to apply to a couple more communities for host community agreements for retail stores, working with a few other teams who are trying to get ready for when the Cannabis Control Commission rolls out the home delivery licenses. So we've been pretty busy.
And for those that don't know, David is an expert in not only social empowerment, but economic empowerment candidates, getting licenses and in front of cannabis commissions, not only here in Massachusetts, but expanding in New England to New York, Maine, and he's really one of the Northeast U.S. experts on the SC and EE applicants who need help, whether it's with a business plan, whether it's funding, whether it's just general knowledge, getting you your deserved spot and your license, correct?
I try to be.
Okay, so that's just so we give you the proper introduction. It's not just, here in Massachusetts, and he can help a lot of people. And his phone has been ringing off the hook since he's been writing for Cannabis.net, Digi Boston, Business Journal.
Yep.
What else did I miss? I mean, he's been coming up there.
Commonwealth
Magazine.
Awesome.
Yep.
And a couple of funeral magazines.
And hey. Take the gig when you can get it, right?
That's right. People are dying to get into that one. I couldn't help it. Again, live streaming on Facebook. We're now up and running, and I'm now looking for any comments. Anybody wants to say hi out there? We have people already watching us, which is always fascinating to me. While we wave the flag and salute the guys from Pure Oasis who have been so patient, there's also another side to that story, that it took almost 4 years to get them to be open. The city of Boston couldn't even get it done, so they had to actually create their own little city council of cannabis. David, I know that you have already talked to that group. Why couldn't Mayor Walsh figure out a way to speed up the host agreements? I don't get it.
I can't comment on a lot, Jimmy. I don't know a lot about the internal politics, but I have approached some of the city councilors to talk about a better way of managing that process. We had a letter published with a lot of great co-signatories in Dig Boston to the Boston Cannabis Commission.
Yeah. Council. It's the council.
Council, the Boston Cannabis Council.
Yeah, Boston Cannabis Council. Right.
So it is unfortunate when you talk to the social equity and economic empowerment folks, some of them are going broke holding properties in Boston. And what is amazing is how hard the city is making it for local residents to get a license in the city. And that shouldn't be that hard. If anything, they should be favoring the people who are in the city. They have connections to the neighborhood. They have more concerns about the neighborhood. And the last thing the city should want is for outsiders to come in, open up stores, pull all that capital out and bring it somewhere else. When you've got people in the city who happen to own the store, when they go out to dinner at night, they're going to go out local. That means they spend it in local restaurants. Those restaurants employ local people. It just causes the money to recirculate through the community. And I'm baffled as to why it is so difficult for a local applicant in Boston to get a host community agreement.
You're really not baffled. I think you do actually know the reason. And I'll tell you what, and no disrespect to our friends in the political world, okay? I know that Mayor Walsh is a recovering alcoholic. I'm pretty sure. I think that's actually public knowledge. And I also know that Governor Baker wants to slow down this cannabis business in the state, and he's done everything he possibly can to put enough layers in place to make it as difficult as possible to get in the cannabis business. And I feel horrible about that, but those are the facts. And I'll tell you, once again, I say this all the time, I am so embarrassed by how my colored people and my gender males have what they have done to both the Native Americans and to the other people of color in this country is embarrassing and disgusting in so many ways. That's how I feel. And I think they've, again, trying to, spin it the right way, because look, we have one open now. Look what we've done. Let's wave the flag. 4 years after the voters voted this cannabis legal. And look, I'm sorry, but I'm embarrassed by that.
Well, you're not the only person. I mean, you remember, was it the Forbes article that compared Illinois to Massachusetts? How one
Chris
did it
Kane, right, at forefront.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. Chris Kane, that's right. He's a Bass guy too. So he wrote the article comparing the Illinois process to what we did at Bass, and it is embarrassing.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it isn't the color of your skin. A lot of it is the color of your wallet.
Right. Oh, no, and everybody's looking to get a piece of the green. David, you are 100% right. There is a money grab going on, not just here in Massachusetts, but in this industry. And unfortunately, I believe as an investment item here with cannabis, a lot of those investment dollars have dried up. Now, we now have our doctor on the phone, so let's welcome in Dr. Ryan Zachlin. Hello, Dr. Z. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. How you doing?
Good.
Doing all right. Hanging in there.
Good. We've got Kurt Dalton here and David Rabinovich joining me in studio. And obviously, Dr. Zachlin, the number one priority and the number one topic that everybody's talking about, of course, is the coronavirus. What are some of the things that you might have insightfully as you look at cannabis? Is there a role for cannabis and the coronavirus? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is certainly a role for cannabis in the coronavirus. I mean, as you know, I think about it from the perspective of the endocannabinoid system and those receptors that we have, including those little CB2 receptors on our immune cells, right? So we want to just think about how we can optimize our immune system. Most importantly, right, I mean, everybody, regardless, needs to stay calm. If you're not immunocompromised, if you're not frail, if you're not old, you don't have a respiratory condition, it's likely going to be in between a bad cold and the flu if you do get it. The precautions that we're taking are to minimize overwhelming the healthcare system so that those in need can be treated appropriately, and we can kind of flatten the curve, so to speak, so we don't have this large spike in cases. So that's, I think, first and foremost, people need to wash their hands, don't touch their face. Social isolation is a good idea if you can do it. In terms of cannabis, you want to think about targeting those CB2 receptors on those immune cells. So I think about terpenes like beta-caryophyllene, which are found in certain strains, but it's also found in holy basil or black pepper or rosemary. So you can use those herbs. And then you want to think about things like THCA or the THC acid, which is basically how the THC is found in its natural form in the plant, is thought to be 10 to 20 times more potent and anti-inflammatory as THC or CBD. So using raw cannabis, or you can even take a couple buds, pea-sized buds, and drop them in some hot water, let it steep for a few minutes and drink it and eat the buds. That's a way to get your THCA. Or you can take tinctures that are found only at places like Alternative Compassion Services or NETA in Massachusetts. Also, I would say that in general, now is a good time to avoid smoking, right? You want to keep your lungs fresh. Certainly, if you are smoking, don't share, don't pass the joint. And I think, if we want to use cannabis, we can use it in the sense of helping us to stay calm and get plenty of rest. So, choose indica strains that are going to give you good sleep. They're going to keep you calm, help you to relax. I would avoid sativas that are racy. And if you tend to be paranoid, now is not the time to be paranoid.
Absolutely not. We've got paranoia amongst us all. Kurt,
I was going to say Dr. Mark Ruffalo, but I can't call you that. The picture we have doesn't have the beard anymore. So I will call you Dr. Ryan Zachlin because I don't recognize you. You walked right into the THCA, and I made in the intro of the show, people will think they'll use orange juice, they'll before a cold, they'll eat broccoli, whatever it is. Is there any logic to be taking THC for its antiviral, whether it's corona or any other virus? Now, would it be a supplement like a multivitamin people should consider to fight a virus?
I mean, I think that it's, there is not necessarily the research and data to back that up. It's a little bit of a leap from bench to bedside, so to speak. But I think, especially as an integrative physician and mind-body doc, I think anytime you're doing something for yourself and saying this is good for me, there is great benefit in that. And so I don't think there's necessarily a downside, particularly with THCA, as it's not intoxicating, as long as you're not taking it in lieu of getting plenty of rest, in lieu of thinking, you know what, I don't really need to wash my hands, I'm using THCA, or I can go out and, in public because I'm using THCA or I'm using cannabis to boost my immune system. I don't want, I wouldn't want people to go around thinking that. But if you are thinking that this is working for me, I mean, there is certainly enough, there's enough evidence pointing to the fact that it may be helpful. Again, it's so early to say, and it may, for all we know, it could be a particular genotype that somebody has that makes them, puts them in a better relationship to, 3 components, one or two cannabinoids and another terpene, and there you have your antiviral effect, right? So we may know this information 10, 20 years from now. I don't know that we can extrapolate it enough to lean on it as a sole crutch for an antiviral property.
Dr. Zachlin, I'm trying to find a reason to eat edibles all day, and the coronavirus is here. Could you help me out a little?
Well, like I said, I would avoid smoking or vaping or any inhaled therapy. You need those lungs right now. I wouldn't say eat them all day necessarily, depending on what you're doing for your job. But perhaps a little bit of CBD during the day to keep yourself calm, and a little bit of THC edibles at night to get some good rest. I think is certainly now would be the time.
I tried, everybody. I tried to get full clearance on edibles all day. Go ahead, Jimmy. That's all I got.
Dr. Z, do you see a day where a doctor like yourself, a cannabis specialist on the ECS endocannabinoid system, will actually be prescribing a titration method for patients?
Yeah, I mean, I do it now, and as best I can, and I think that part of the issue that I have is, frankly, availability and consistency. So for the patients that I can get the right formulations into their hands, the right tinctures consistently into their hands, I think that there will be, and I think that just putting, of course, a plug in for my practice, which can be found at www.zachlin.com. That's ZAKLIN.com. We actually just started taking insurance as an insurance-based model, hybrid model. And so the purpose for that was so that I could have better access, my patient could have better access, and quite frankly, including follow-ups. So I think the model has to shift from this certain, come in once a year, get your card for access, come back in a year, to specialists like myself, where you're being seen more frequently, more products are available to these patients, and we can continue to kind of modify and titrate their dose as needed.
So you said insurance. Is that regular? So is there coding in the Massachusetts health insurance for cannabis, or are you coding it as like a doctor visit, mind body?
No, so the fact of the matter, what I realize is I'm actually a real doctor practicing real medicine, taking care of real conditions.
No way.
And so it's actually, it's a sophisticated model, but the patients, I'm not billing for the cannabis portion. I'm billing for, I offer a comprehensive assessment in the comprehensive program, of which cannabis is one slice of that. So the slice is kind of paired off, and that's paid for in cash. And that's a separate, it's almost essentially a separate visit, if you will. And so that's separated out. And then I'm seeing them for whatever condition they're coming to me for and making recommendations. And the recommendation invariably will include cannabis as a part of it. So that's basically how I'm able to bill insurance for it.
And speaking of don't sharing that joint, one of our favorite supporters here is the Weedjit titration system. Here, I'm going to hold it up. I have one now that actually works. And you can take it apart in 4 different ways. Look at that. There you go. There's 1, 2. And this right here, this little widget thing also has a filter at the end that you can throw away after you're done. And these actually fit right on to a pre-roll. Actually, it was a lot straighter before I put it in its container, but you can see how that works with a little Acti tube. Should I do it like that?
That way you can each get your
own
widget.
I apologize for my arthritic fingers. I know it scares a lot of people.
Just children.
Just children. I believe, Dr. Zachlin, you have a clinic of some sort, an open clinic this weekend?
We do. We actually have we have a Saturday pop-up clinic up in Salem at 84 Highland Ave, Suite 311. But patients can go to the website. That's www.zaklin, or call us at 978-998-0010. And we are seeing patients. People need to stay socially isolated in terms of large crowds, but we see one patient at a time, and we do practice obviously excellent hygiene in our practice. So there's no worries there. But we're open and ready to see people.
Yes, and may I say that you have one of the nicest looking staff I've ever seen in a doctor's office. Is that okay to say that?
You can say whatever you want, Jimmy. It's always, I'm sure anybody would appreciate being told that.
There you go. That's the way I look at it too. Any other tip other than the typical washing your hands, staying away from people, the regular germophobic kind of practices that we have to use now in our regular days? Is there any other tricks? I know that Kurt talked about vitamin C. Is zinc a good thing to use as well?
Zinc is difficult. Zinc can make you nauseated. Zinc has been shown to decrease the duration of common colds. It really is an individual thing. I don't know that there's an all-comer. I think honestly, getting plenty of rest is probably the most important thing, making sure that you get plenty of sleep and give your body time to rejuvenate. And, of course, staying plenty hydrated is always key.
Absolutely. And I'm all for hydration. Lots of water, never enough in your body, correct? You can put 64 ounces a day in your body, and that's still not enough, I'm hearing.
Well, you can overhydrate. I think you have to kind of look at your urine. If your urine is absolutely clear, then you might be a little too hydrated. And of course, it depends on your condition, right? So if you have congestive heart failure or certain conditions, then you are going to end up overhydrating yourself. So I would be hesitant to say you can't overhydrate, but I think you're probably kind of referring to the fact that most people tend to be on the dehydrated side. So certainly adequate hydration, it's most people aren't going to reach that point to where they're overhydrating themselves. You can end up dropping your sodium levels, and but that's very extreme amounts of water.
There you go. Well, I'll be checking out my urine in just a few minutes. No, I'll do it at the end of the show. I promise I won't be doing anything in a cup or anything like that. But Dr. Ryan Zachlin, I so appreciate you taking your time out on a Thursday. It's a very challenging time for the human race as we finally recognize just how easy it is to spread germs in a modern society. Good point.
Yes, it is.
All right, Dr. Z.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good luck at your open clinic on Saturday.
I
also want to say, do a shout out here, and I don't know if we have our graphic ready, but a somewhat regular co-host of this show is Hillary King. And a few days ago, Hillary texted me, there she is! That's our get well wish for Hillary, who was in the Mass General Hospital 2 nights ago, showing signs of fever and the flu. And from what I understand now, they actually sent her home because I don't think they had any of the coronavirus tests to test her.
Yep, she's been in the media a little bit this week because not on the cannabis side for cannabis and corona.
Right.
Which meant something else for
Right.
this year. But it's because she went to Mass General Hospital. If you're not from the area, it's one of the better hospitals in the world. And they sent her home. They didn't have a kit.
Right.
Test her,
And
so
this is actually Hillary's post on Facebook. I'm going to read it verbatim. I don't meet the CDC guidelines for having come in direct contact with someone who has confirmed tested positive, so they aren't testing me for COVID-19 due to a shortage in testing kits. However, they admitted me to the ER for evaluation for strep and influenza to see if it's one of those or rule them out. They initially said that they think it's unlikely that you have COVID-19 since I haven't had any known direct contact with someone who was tested positive, and I haven't traveled to any hotspots outside the U.S., but at initial evaluation, I, as in Hillary, caught their attention because of her symptoms and vital signs. And you know what? She even admits that she lives right down the street from that Biogen conference site where there's been the majority of cases documented in Massachusetts where they came from. I think it's something like 73 cases out of 91 people.
We trace back to that conference.
Right. So anyway,
get well, Hillary.
Get well, Hillary. You already look better than you did, I can tell, and I appreciate you tuning in as well. And if you do feel like calling in, you could text my cell phone. I know you have it, and Dan French will get back to you on a time that we will welcome your actual report, your individual experience, which we certainly wish you to feel better about that. All right, so that's Hillary King, and hopefully we get a chance to actually talk with her as well. Later on this program, we are also going to be talking with the CEO of Nucleus One out of Maine. His name is Jacques Santucci, and they have a special event planned for Thursday, March 19th. That would be next week. However, not sure if they're still going to have it, and that will probably be the first question we ask Jacques in the next half hour of this program. In this break, we are going to take a break in just a moment. I just want to see what I think. I think in my magic bus. Oh, I know exactly what we have planned, and that will be the opening of the new Rev Clinics dispensary on Mass Ave in Cambridge in Central Square. And Rev Clinics is one of the top medical dispensaries in the Massachusetts area. They now have 3 locations, 2 in Cambridge, and we all know that they are also in some kind of dispute, let's just say, with the City of Cambridge Council. And I know, David, you've been following that as well. I don't need you to go into it now because we've got about under a minute to go until we have our break, our first break. But on the other side, we'll have Jacques Santucci on the line. And then at the top of the hour, we'll have Dr. Jordan Kobritz will also Jordan Tischler. Jordan Kobritz. If Steve Buckley's out there, he's going to know who Jordan Kobritz is.
I hope Steve's watching.
I hope he's watching, too. I don't kind of see him here, but I know he is. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more of We Talk Live with Kurt Dalton and Jimmy Young. Don't go away. Revolutionary Clinics continues to battle the City Council of Cambridge over their right to apply for an adult use license. Yet, those proceedings didn't interfere with the expansion and the opening of Rev Clinics' 3rd medicinal dispensary. This one is right in the middle of Central Square in Cambridge on Mass Ave.
It is just so exciting to finally be open 6 months after where we thought we'd be, but we're here, we're in Cambridge, we're in Central Square. I'm really excited.
How important, as the educational director, is it to educate the public about some of the benefits of this plant medicine?
Oh, it has to start with education. That's what I believe. I really came to the cannabis industry about 2.5 years ago thinking I knew something about cannabis, and the truth is I knew less than nothing. I think so many people approach cannabis as they have a very set idea of what it is, who uses it, what it's for. The thing I love most about my job is I've gotten to meet every kind of person, every walk of life, every political background, every socioeconomic status, all united by this appreciation for one thing, cannabis. And in the medical space, that there's one way to consume cannabis, and it's smoking.
It's not.
It's not. It's absolutely not. So I vape a lot. It's sort of a joke. Like, people have this idea of people who walk down the street and like blow big clouds. It's not what I'm about. As we say in the medical cannabis industry. So the THC is in that cloud. So when you exhale, anyway, I love to vape. It's a lot softer on my lungs. I don't like to cough, but there's also edible consumption methods. There's topicals for people who want to rub something on their skin. There's every kind of product out there for every kind of customer.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to We Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton with Cannabis.net.
And
David Rabinovitz
from
New Can Group.
There you go. That's the idea, guys, is you introduce yourself every time. It's just one of those things that we like to do here on this show. Welcome back to the program. You know, we are right in the middle of an unprecedented situation in this country with the coronavirus. I cannot believe that all the major sporting leagues and events like the NCAA's March Madness have canceled, and I'm not quite sure what that meant, Dan, just so you know. Does that mean I have Jacques? Is that what you're telling me? Yes. Okay, good. All right, well, let's go. Let's go to the phones. Hello, Jacques Santucci from Nucleus One. How are you, sir?
Good. I think that's what he was telling you, that I'm on the phone and I'm waiting for you.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you waiting, and I appreciate you joining our program with David Rabinovitz, who you were supposed to meet with, I guess, at NCIA, Kurt Dalton, and myself.
Yes.
The first question I have to ask you, Jacques, is you are planning an event Thursday, March 19th in Maine to talk about the emerging Maine market. Is that event still scheduled?
It sounds like I'm on the regular media, right? Isn't that what everybody's talking about these days? Are you going to do it? Are you not going to do it?
Right. I had to ask the question.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually doing a blog post, a video post a few days ago about creating emergency plans and contingency plans based on coronavirus and how a business can actually survive, and that applies for the cannabis industry, and because I think everybody's going to get hurt one way or the other, hopefully not physically, but business-wise, we're all going to feel the impact in the next few weeks. That said, as it relates to our event, I really don't have the answer just yet. It's a small event, small being, less than 100 people. And, so we're having phone calls with the speakers. We're going to probably make a decision tomorrow or Monday. And, it feels like somehow, not canceling will not be politically correct. On the other side, it's probably needed somehow. So the answer is I don't know yet.
Okay, please make sure that you let me know when you finally make that decision, because we are planning on taking the trip up to Maine for that little get-together you have. And you have Eric Gunderson is your keynote speaker, who's the head of the Maine Cannabis Commission, correct?
Yes, correct. And so let me ask you the question. Are you still planning on coming on Thursday?
If the event happens, we'll be there. Is that okay?
Outstanding. That's what I want to hear. I just talked to one of our other speakers, and he said he would come. I'm speaking to Eric Gunderson tomorrow afternoon, and I'll see what's happening with the state of Maine. Hopefully, they won't be restricted on meetings. It doesn't sound like that's the case. So right now we're still on, and we'll make the decision, like I said, probably either tomorrow afternoon or Monday. And of course, I will let you know, and we'll let everybody know through social media and email.
I appreciate that. One of the interesting developments in this coronavirus is the CDC is recommending no large gatherings of people. It's one of the reasons why all the sports leagues have shut down. And, of course, everybody has a different definition of what large gathering means. I believe it was anything over 250, and then I heard 500, and then I heard 1,000, and I feel like I'm an auctioneer. What is the attendance? What do you think how many people do you think are coming to your event, Jacques?
Well, right now we have over 60 people coming, and then people are still buying tickets today, plus the speakers. So we're expecting between 60 and 75 people. The goal of that event was to have a small event of people who are interested in learning more about the cannabis industry, learning more about the Maine market that's coming up, learning more about the awesome speakers that we have. And so we wanted to keep it like at a smaller level, so the networking is there and then the education is there. And we actually are planning another one in New York in June. And at this point, I'm not sure if we can even think about doing it. But we were planning another one, same size, in New York for mid-June.
Gotcha. So the emerging Maine market, where is the state of Maine? I think I know the answer to this question, but where is the state of Maine in the process of opening adult use recreational stores? They're trying to keep the people in Maine, kind of giving them the easier track, I guess, to get a license. What is the state of cannabis in Maine, Jacques?
Yeah, so how about I tell you, too, why we picked the state of Maine. So, I started in the cannabis industry actually 10 years ago this month, and because Maine was one of the first states that had a licensing process in early 2010, and it was the first state for sure on the East Coast, and there were 8 licenses for medical marijuana dispensary and production. And I was part of a group 10 years ago that worked on those licenses, and we were awarded 4 of the 8 official dispensaries and 4 official operations, and we started a company called Wellness Connection of Maine. And so that's where Nucleus One is based. But in the past 10 years, we actually worked outside of the state of Maine, for other clients, and really since 2014. Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hawaii, Ohio. I mean, we worked in a lot of states, and it feels like because the state of Maine is now finally opening to adult use, we are back home, and then we are working with clients in Maine, and because it's a new market that's coming up. 2016, the state allowed through a referendum for adult use. And for a lot of reasons, mostly political, nothing really happened until last year. And so now the state is accepting applications through a little bit like what's happening in Massachusetts, not really on a lottery or a ward base, but more on a process base where you apply with the state. You get your provisional license either as a retail store or manufacturing, processing, or cultivation. Then you apply at your local town, assuming that they opt in, because all the towns by law were opt out of the program, and they have to decide that they want to opt in. And then once you have your provisional license at the town level, then you can finalize your license at the state level. So the state started to accept their through their process on December 5th, in 2019. And at this point, they have over 100 applications in the process. And then now they are starting to give the conditional license in probably in the next few weeks, and then everybody's expecting the first stores to be open, sometime early summer or midsummer.
There you go.
Oh, Jacques, this is Kurt with Cannabis.net. Very familiar with Maine. Spend a lot of time there. It seems Maine just keeps kicking the date down the road. Just to follow up, how confident are you? I think it's June is officially what they're saying. Is this going to happen in June, or are we going to see September? Is there going to be another delay? Like, what do you feel? Is this really going to happen, or are we going to kind of keep kicking it down the road?
Yeah, so it's a good question. That's a good question. So initially, the date was March, and it actually came from a journalist in Maine that mentioned March a few months ago. But when I was talking to my contact at the state, they were pretty sure that it would never happen in March because they would not have the time to process the applications, and the towns will not be ready. And so now I am pretty confident that sometime in June or July, some stores will be ready to open because they already applied. They have 90 days to kind of complete the application at the state level. The towns are processing applications. So, December plus 3, your February, March plus 2 or 3 more months. I think we can assume that June, July could be the month where we see the first operations. That said, I don't think we can confirm it because there's so many things that need to happen before those stores are ready. On top of the application from the state, on top of the application from the license from the town, they also have to get their operation going, and so that might be a little bit later.
So if you were a gambling man, What would the date be that you would say the first recreational store will be open in Maine?
Is there an office pool?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I would say the week before the 4th of July.
I was just going to say, around Maine, 4th of July is big, so yep.
That's right. I've been to plenty of 4th of Julys in Maine. In fact, Jacques, let me ask you a question from a financial perspective. Kurt is far more tuned into this scene than I am as far as the financials go, as is David. But is it still a good investment to get involved with cannabis at either the retail level, or is it still almost better to be on the ancillary side of the business trying to sell into the cannabis industry?
So the first question should be, is it still a good investment to invest in cannabis, period?
Yep.
And at that point, so yeah, my background is around, business management and creating opportunities for business owners. And that's the first question. And then we have to ask ourselves, what is a good investment? So I think what was the so-called good investment in cannabis was really 4 or 5 years ago, when the regulations were not slowing down the business side. I think at this point, between compliance and then the growth of the industry and the fact that the prices are coming down and things like this, it's becoming less of the huge investment that people were dreaming of 4 or 5 years ago. But that said, I think it's still a good investment because there's a lot of opportunities. We are just in the infancy of the industry. There's so many things that need to be done in every state. Most states are opening. So I think it's still a good place to invest. But then the next question is, how do you invest and where do you invest? And I think what we've seen is too many people investing in projects that were not really well planned. And where cannabis was the hype, but really it's a business like any other industry, and some of those projects probably were missing a little bit of a realistic expectation. But for the projects that are well done and well planned out with a good team, with a good business model, then there's a lot of good opportunities. And then to your question, where to go, I think cultivation and processing is very specific, and unless somebody knows what they're doing and they have something different that they can make a difference in the market, it's a much more difficult investment because you have to produce at a lower cost and a higher quality. That means that the risk is really on that part of the industry. I think retail can be a good investment if there's something particular on the customer experience, on the quality and the type of product, and obviously location, because retail is really about location. And I think in some states, just selling cannabis is probably not the unique thing to do. You need to have more than cannabis. But I would agree with you, Jimmy, that ancillary services is, I think, the next thing that's happening for the cannabis industry. There's so many opportunities that as for a business on things that are not plant touching, but are providing services, software, new equipment, customer experience, testing. There's so many new things that need to happen there.
Yeah, I have always said invest in a law firm, to be honest with you, Jacques, because I think they're going to win no matter what. David, I think you got a question for him.
Well, no, I think Kurt wanted me to weigh in on that. I kind of agree with a lot of what he's saying. I think it's a great place to invest, but I think on the private side, I think the wind is way out of the public companies.
Yeah.
And I happen to agree that retail is really where it's at. Retail, you have the lowest investment, and you are the gateway to the consumer. I think the biggest risk, as I've said several times, is on the cultivation end. I mean, I think some of these cultivation facilities are going to end up in the funeral industry.
Wow. And Jacques, in Maine, I don't know if Jimmy even saw the news this week. They're part of the appropriations is to create a task force. Is it in Maine with the 4 members to go after the black market using the tax revenue? How do you guys feel about that? Obviously, being a licensed producer, you must like that, but it's getting a lot of blowback from people as far as using the actual tax revenue to create a task force, basically a drug task force to go after the black market in Maine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in general, I think the risk for the industry is the black market, the illicit market. So Nucleus One is a consulting firm, and we help people with their application and really get their plan in place and have a great expectation, start the operation. We're also now advising potential investors and through due diligence, and we're starting to get some calls about actually turning around some licenses, people that are getting in trouble. But the theme around all this is really what is the risk, and besides the inner risk of each company where the team cannot execute or the business plan is not there, really it's the illegal market. And because how can you compete when you have to pay taxes and keep quality and improve your customer experience or your product, where you're competing with people who already have a different product and not paying taxes? So I agree that if some of the taxes from the cannabis industry, from the legal cannabis industry, can be allocated to have better compliance enforcement, and then help the regulated operators to be stronger than the illegal market, I think it's fantastic.
And now wellness has a great reputation, for those that don't know, in Maine. You have 4 locations. As you said, retail is location, location, location.
Yeah.
Tell us where your locations are, how people can find you, even online or in person. Tell us about wellness and how to get there.
So I started Wellness. I'm one of the founder of Wellness Connection, but actually I have not been involved with Wellness for the past couple of years because I actually focused on other parts of the industry, one being Nucleus One consulting and helping other operators. And I also started a software company, looking at data and cost and a system of engagement for the industry. But that said, I know a lot about Wellness Connection and of Maine, which I'm glad you said has a good reputation. So Wellness has 4 locations, one in Portland, one in South Portland, and then one in Gardner, which is just outside of Augusta, and one in Brewer, just outside of Bangor.
And I've been to all of those communities back in the day, I just want to say, because I consider Maine to be my second home state, even though at one point Massachusetts and Maine were the same state, right, Jacques?
Yeah.
Terrific. Go ahead.
And with the adult use coming in Maine, that's going to change a lot. You can think that for those of you who haven't been to downtown Portland or the Old Port, you might not see it, but you can think that within 6 months maybe or 9 months there'll be a few stores downtown Portland. So that means that the quaint Maine Old Port will be totally different with maybe 10 or 20 stores downtown. So that's going to be an interesting change too.
Right next to the Elevation Burger. That's a good location.
Well, it's also around the corner from the Old Port Tavern, which I have a lot of memories that I can remember there anyway. But Jacques Santucci, thank you so much from Nucleus One. You can find out more about the emerging State of Maine event on your Nucleus One website, yes?
Yes, correct. Nucleus-one.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And, we are on the web. So reach out, and we can either see you next Thursday if nothing changes. Otherwise, we can chat through the web.
You got it. All right, Jacques Santucci from Nucleus-One, that's ONE.com, and we will hopefully get a chance to see you on Thursday.
Hope so.
Yes.
Look, I love people from Maine. I just want to say my son was actually born in Portland, Maine, just for the record.
Oh, he's one of those guys. All right.
What does that mean? We left 2 years later.
2 states, he's a transplant to Mass.
Yeah, well, I was born in Newark, New Jersey.
He's a birther from Maine.
Yeah, and I got out of Newark, New Jersey real fast.
But he's right. Maine, what people don't know is that it's a very poor state when you get off the oceans and the lakes.
Mm-hmm.
So the black market is fierce because the extra money that an illicit market or non-licensed person will grow, it means a lot. It's poor like the state of Mississippi. And that's why he talked about that the black market, there's a lot of black market up there. And if you look on a map, Maine is a huge green forest next to another big green forest called Canada. A lot of spaces to grow, and it's fierce.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, there's some comparison, I guess, with Humboldt County, California,
in a way,
because you've got so much land, you certainly can't police all that land, that entire illicit market. So it's a challenge. But I will say that the growers of Maine have a lot of experience in this space. Let's just say,
and there's definitely Maine in general is kind of a granola state. I mean that in a very good way. So the product on the black market tends to be very clean if you're comparing it to another state. Because that's just how the people are. They would never consider using certain pesticides and certain things. You're going to get a good product. It's really fierce in Maine to go against an illicit market compared to a licensed.
Yeah, that's right. That's up
right.
in Maine. I know
Can't
how to
get
do
there
that.
from
actually.
here.
Yes, you can. Okay. All right. So that was Jacques Santucci, and it's interesting. He didn't mention the fact that he's married to Patricia Rossi, who is one of the most powerful women in cannabis and is now the acting CEO of Wellness Connection.
Okay, I did not know that. David, do you think Maine Social Equity, Economic Empowerment, they have a program that's up yet, or is that...
I have not followed it up
Okay.
there. I know that, in fact, I know some of the people from Massachusetts who got frustrated have headed up to Maine to see if they can get a license.
Yeah, I've heard that too. So
Hey,
there you go.
You know, and again, they're just trying to start a business in a new industry, and there's so many levels
The
of
right way,
regulation.
legally, like not trying to do the illicit.
Exactly right. And, we all recognize that the illicit market certainly survived and thrived for quite a long time. But now that we have turned that page towards legality, decriminalization, descheduling almost maybe could be, you still really don't know where this is going to go. And one of the things that I found really fascinating about talking to all these people in this space is, while we can sit here and talk about the THC-based cannabis sativas, but hemp as an industry they're just starting to scratch the surface using hemp. And there's so many more applications to hemp than the more well-known, if you will, commodity of cannabis sativa with THC. David, as someone who looks at markets all the time and has your finger on the pulse of a lot of businesses, bet you didn't know that, by the way. Where do you think hemp is going to be in 10 years in comparison to the legal cannabis THC industry business?
I think what you're going to find in 10 years, the legal THC market is, relatively speaking, going to be small, right? Because you're talking about the recreational side of marijuana. That doesn't include the pharmaceutical side. It doesn't include a whole bunch of other areas, right? Everybody's focused on the rec side of it, but a lot of the new products are going to come out in pharmaceuticals, wellness, all that sort of thing. And then that's going to be dwarfed by hemp, because what you're looking at from marijuana is the oil that comes out of the plant, one way or the other. You're trying to smoke it, vaporize it, put it into foods, but take it in. With hemp, you've got the fiber that can be mixed with concrete to make hempcrete. You can convert it into basically a plastic. There are auto parts that can be made out of hemp.
Clothing, Luxury Leaf.
Right.
One of our friends, Luxury Leaf, is and I hope one day we'll actually have a hemp T-shirt.
Yep. Become a Masscan member, and you can get a hemp Masscan T-shirt as part of your initial membership package.
Oh, I love that.
So there's all sorts of things hemp can do.
And that plays right into hopefully one of our callers a little later, if he gets off his plane, is raising $150 million for industrial hemp and going right after this paint. I just discussed it earlier today with him. Hemp paint, I guess it was a thing we had 50, 60 years ago, and he's going to go all in on the industrial uses of hemp, but we don't know if he'll be off the plane in time to call in. So.
And why don't you tell us
Bruce,
who he is?
We have our friend Bruce from Ottawa. Bruce from Ottawa coming, hopefully calling in later. So
Bruce Linton, the former CEO of Canopy Growth, and the guy who I think a lot of people in the industry have looked at as one of the true heroes, an entrepreneur of the year, someone who built a small company into a billion-dollar company, right?
Yeah, certainly a pioneer, and also raising, like I said, $150 million for a hemp project. Just had his first ever mushrooms, medical mushrooms go public.
Psilocybin
Mind medicine just went public last week. So busy guy, got some things going on. So.
Yeah, he always does, right? And the thing that I will tell you this, meeting Bruce was really a lot of fun. And he is just a regular guy. I mean, there really isn't, he doesn't exude, that Harvard PhD kind of, oh, sorry, Dr. Jordan Tischler's calling in at 9 o'clock.
Except him, he's good.
Yeah, he's good.
We like him.
Right, we like Jordan. But, he's just a regular guy. And maybe that is the secret to his success.
Yep, let's hope so. Well, hopefully he'll get out. He's on a plane right now, but he said he's going to call in when he lands, and hopefully we're still on the air. So
there you go. So this is Weed Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young, along with Kurt Dalton and David Rabinovitz in studio. We are live streaming on Facebook. I'm actually monitoring it and doing some likes and things like that. I have absolutely no idea what that means, but I'm doing it anyway. Guys, do you see anything happening in the in this world of cannabis now? Is the stigma are we finally seeing a movement that people are starting to accept this a little bit more? Just out off the top of your head.
Absolutely. Now I follow a lot of the stories in the media, and what I've been amazed with over the past 3 weeks are stories about communities in Massachusetts that are now rethinking their bans on marijuana. And I think what it comes down to is they look at communities like Northampton that are raking in a ton of money and doing a lot of good with it, and yet the sky hasn't fallen. The people haven't all become drug users. The town hasn't been overrun by wackos coming in to buy pot. The largest growing segment of the marijuana market is the 55 and up market. So now the communities are realizing that it's not going to destroy their towns. The towns that banned it are starting to take another look at it.
Sure, because they want a piece of the pie too.
I'll play the devil's advocate there. Like you said, the money coming in is making people rethink it. I don't know how much is goodwill and good intention compared to, wait, how much did my neighbor town just take in taxes? Like, wait a minute. So
Right, and we also recognize that the state, I don't want to say they've misappropriated the tax revenue, but I do know that there is some question on whether or not that tax revenue that they have picked up is going to the right place. Right, David?
That's right. That's true.
And again, another reason to be embarrassed by what is going on amongst the regulators in this space. So, again, coming up in the next half hour, we will talk with another doctor, Dr. Jordan Tischler of Inhale MD, and we'll have plenty more talk about the cannabis sativa plant, its magical uses, and I'm even going to get into some of the gadgets and gizmos that are out there, like this thing right here. I'm going to hold it up because I thought it was called a bong condom, but no, it's a mouthpiece, right?
Right. Yes.
What the hell do I know? We'll have more of this
bong
show.
Condom,
Bong, whatever.
Mouthpiece.
We'll have more in a minute. Don't go away. Hey, you guys. First thing I got to start with is congratulations. The needle has moved in Washington, D.C., and you guys have been behind that whole process. Getting not only the House Judiciary Committee, but also the U.S. House to move that Safe Banking Act and putting the pressure on the Republican Senate. Congratulations on the great year.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It was actually, I think it was the Financial Services Committee. It originally moved out of committee and then eventually went to the House floor. But 2019 was definitely a monumental year for our industry, being able to get that legislative victory, both at the committee level and then obviously at the House level. Now the pivot is obviously towards the Senate in 2020, which we're going to be working really hard on. Been working on the Safe Banking Act since for at least 6 years now. So like to finally get that House victory is a big deal. But now we got to turn up and crank up the heat on the committees in Congress, and then obviously all of the other senators as well.
Can you describe what it must be like in the Capitol, in the halls of the Capitol building, or walking around D.C., knowing that the Republicans and the Democrats really just don't like each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's telling that a lot of the issues that we have now and the challenges we have have less to do with cannabis being controversial as it used to be, and more to do with just the partisan rancor and the general dysfunction of Congress, which is frustrating to everybody in the country. So, but it's it was great to see that for example, the Safe Banking Act passed the House of Representatives with an overwhelming bipartisan vote on
313 to
103 to 2, yeah, something like that. So overwhelming bipartisan vote. We had almost 100 Republicans, and that was the day that Nancy Pelosi announced that they were going to launch an impeachment inquiry.
Exactly. I totally have been following this, so I know, and I tell you, because I got to know you. I mean, I think of you in the trenches, and imagine what's going on down there. So now it's in the Senate's hands. Is the Senate going to move on this before November?
Well, I mean, I think we have a shot at it. You know, I can't guarantee anything.
You can't guarantee anything in Washington, D.C.
But you know, I think that if it gets a vote in the committee and out to the floor, I'm pretty confident that it has the votes to pass. But that's still, you know, that's the if is getting through Senator Crapo's banking committee, and so we're working hard every day to try to make that happen.
Okay, that was two of the principals of the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association. You saw Aaron Smith, who is one of the founders of the NCIA, and you saw Calico Castile, who is in charge of business development and partnerships for the NCIA. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Weed Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
And I'm David Rabinovitz, a happy guest and happy to be here.
And so happy that you filled in for some of the others that were supposed to be here, but appreciate that, David. You're a good friend, and I also know you like the opportunity to come out and just talk about this stuff because, you know, where else in the greater Boston area or even in this country, Kurt, right, can you have an open line to have a talk show? And I know that I gave it out before. It's 617 544
7307.
7307.
John Hanna.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And you could give us a call, and we might even put you on the air with us here on We Talk Live. In just a matter of minutes or so, we will be talking with Dr. Jordan Tischler. And, of course, we are all in on the coronavirus. We understand how debilitating that this has been, not just to the individuals who have been stricken by this, but also to the stock market, to the businesses, to the whole idea of how easily a germ can be transferred and transmitted to other people. David, you know, I mean, what's your impressions of what's been going on with this coronavirus? Has the media fed this too much?
I don't think so, Jimmy. Actually, I think what's really going to save us are the big companies that have told people to stay home. My prediction is mid-April, we're going to be out of the woods with this. And I think if the government does a few things and doesn't mess up a few other things, the economy will pick right back up. And this will hopefully only be a blip versus leading us down into a recession.
I remember listening to you guys in the other room talking about how this could end up being a blessing in disguise for business in the area because it's certainly impacted the traffic patterns, right?
Well, I think we were talking about something a little bit different. We were talking about the fact that a lot of companies are telling their people to stay home and work from home. And then this is a Zoom Communications.
Yep.
Their stock is going through the roof as a result of this because they've got the ability to commute by your computer. And I think when more people get comfortable with that, more people are going to stay home. Most of the schools have closed. My wife is a professor at one of the local colleges, teaches at another university, and they're all going to online learning right now. They don't want the students in the schools.
Right. I teach at Emerson, and I had my last in-person class this past Wednesday. We will be going back online on March 23rd. But speaking of online, on our phone line is an old friend and a good friend, Dr. Jordan Tischler. Dr. Tischler, welcome to We Talk Live again with Jimmy Young, Kurt Dalton, and David Rabinovitz.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. So what is your take on what is going on with the coronavirus in this country right now, not just in this country, but around the world? And is there a role for cannabis to play either in a preventive situation or a relief situation?
Well, you know, I think things have gotten very out of hand very quickly. I think that the public health efforts are well underway and are definitely going to help ameliorate this, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's just the nature of these things. I was just reading moments ago that one of the chief medical officers in an area of Italy has died of coronavirus. Wow. So he was 67, which makes him not very old, but certainly not a young man. And the point is that this virus can be harmful to people who are not necessarily all that high risk.
Right. Right. Well,
so, you know, it's scary.
Right.
They closed my school system, the school system my kids in. I think that was a good decision. It leaves us wondering what the heck we're going to do with her now. But
that is a big challenge for parents. Parents, a lot of people think parenting is all joy. It is the toughest job any of us have ever had. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
but
also,
none of us would turn it down either, though. I don't think.
Exactly. Well, once you're in it to win it. You're in it for the whole experience.
The duration. Yep.
That's right. And I might say that the in-law side of things on my family added a new member to our family today. We had a new nephew for my brother-in-law Jerry down in Mahwah, New Jersey, and I want to congratulate Jessica and Jose and that group. I might as well do that, and everybody else in the Applestein clan, as it were. But, Jordan, let's get back to the use of cannabis as a medicine, because I know that is something that you really are building your whole practice around now, or at least a part of your practice around now. Where are we finding, has it leveled off? Are you finding you're still teaching people about the endocannabinoid system? Where are we in the education of the public towards cannabis at this point?
I think we're just at the beginning of all of that. I think that, oftentimes we operate in circles where the people around us have a fairly good knowledge of the endocannabinoid system, at least at the lay level, perhaps not, quite at the scientific level. And I think that gives us a certain bubble in which we exist. That we don't really realize just how much the real mainstream has no idea about that. And so, as you mentioned, my practice is exclusively around taking care of people using cannabis as a medicine now. And really the challenge for me, and the one that we're really working very hard to meet, is, how do we get out to the people for whom this would never even cross their mind? And so there's a whole process of reaching out through support groups and senior centers, et cetera, as well as obviously trying to educate my physician colleagues so that they are the ones who are saying, well, you've got chemotherapy coming up. You should go see Dr. Tischler first so that he can get you started on a regimen that's going to help you, rise to the challenge more successfully. So I think there's a lot to be done there.
Jordan, this is Kurt from Cannabis.net. When people feel they're getting sick with a cold, they tend to, pound orange juice and say vitamin C. With the THC's antiviral properties, including THCA, is there any benefit for someone to be using cannabis for, any virus, let alone the coronavirus? Could it be a supplement, like a vitamin? Would it help with viral conditions in the body to use cannabis at this stage for what's going on in the world?
I'd love to say yes, but our best evidence at the moment suggests no. Unfortunately, we have this idea that cannabinoids can be mildly immunosuppressive, which on the one hand you could think would make things worse, but we haven't seen that. On the other hand, you could think that maybe it would help suppress some of the damage that the virus is causing, but we haven't seen that either. And in fact, the first time I was asked this question about whether cannabis could be helpful for viral infection, first of all, I was like, oh, that's a very interesting idea. But I had, in fact, only an hour or so earlier read a study that had come out that morning in which it wasn't coronavirus